My name is Andy. I have 10 years old. I moved with my family to the quiet town of Ravenswood, and I felt very happy because the new house is spacious and has a large garden I can play with my bike. The new house is much bigger than our previous house. When I got out of the car, I couldn't wait for my parents from happiness. Ran upstairs to see my new big room and threw myself on the bed. I can't wait to empty the contents of the boxes with my toys, and the house had many rooms. I opened all the doors except one room that I tried to open but failed, and my dad also tried but failed. He convinced us that the door is closed because it is old and he will try to open it again later because he is tired at the moment. And on the first night, after sunset, the electricity began to flicker alarmingly after hours. But Dad Johnson considered it normal because the house is old, except that I was scared because of the room and the chimney of the old wooden stove. But the first night passed peacefully. But soon the power outage became a nightly occurrence, always in the middle of the night, and we began to stumble in the dark, fumbling with light bulbs, and Dad looked out of our big window to make sure that the power outage in our house was only us, not the whole neighborhood. But our happiness at home after unpacking the boxes and arranging the furniture was much greater than the darkness. But as the days passed, small, unimportant belongings and food began to disappear without a trace. So we thought that Mom was misplacing things or forgetting their places due to exhaustion from moving from our old house. And on the third day, with the increasing power outage, my father asked our neighbor for an electrician number to help us fix the defect. And when he came, he did not find any faults in the wiring. So the tragedy continued. And the problem was that I recently enrolled in school and I need to continue my lessons constantly. And that same night, as usual, the electricity went out, and that day my father was late at work and my mother and I were left at home alone. But over time, the fear of the dark began to give us a state of anxiety and horror. And I was in my room alone by candlelight, and my mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner. But I heard voices in the house until my father came home from work and found the room locked as it is. The desperation of my parents prompted the installation of security cameras, hoping to capture evidence of mysterious events. And on the fourth day at night, by chance, my parents discovered a hidden door in the basement. My father defied the darkness and went down to the dim cellar, refusing to let any of us come with him. And with each step, he descended the steps of the old wooden staircase, making a sound that suggested that he would collapse any time the air got colder. So my father tried to quietly open the cellar door, holding the lamp in his hand. The room smelled bad and Dad couldn't stand it, but he was surprised by a strange, thin man staring at Dad with hollow eyes, and in seconds, Dad tried to hit him with an iron tool, thinking that he was a thief waiting for the right moment to commit his crime. However, the stranger begged my father, tried to calm him down, introduced himself as Elias, a former resident of the house who was going through difficult times, and explained to my father that he was trapped in the basement, isolated from the world so that no one would see and recognize him, confirming that he was living on meager supplies that he was stealing from the house in our absence, and that he had heard from my father that he was going to install cameras that prevented him from going upstairs again since that time. While the man was explaining his crisis to us, my mother and I felt a mixture of fear and sympathy for the man at the same time. However, my father's anger prompted him to call the police so that this man would take a punishment, especially because he terrified us. And with the man being taken to the police car while he was handcuffed, he apologized to my father, stressing that he had indeed made a mistake and that his difficult circumstances were what prompted him to this action, and he had no intention of any harm to our family. In the face of my entreaties, my father waived the communication, while taking the man's confession not to repeat what happened again. Finally, our normal life and calm returned to our family after the truth was revealed that the power outage was due to a malfunction in the basement room wiring, which was repaired. But what happened left me feeling worried and afraid, and my eyes remain hanging on the basement door with any power outage naturally in the neighborhood. Megan is a girl living in Philadelphia, which is about 152 kilometers away from her workplace at Stellar Corp, a company specializing in technology. As usual, Megan wakes up early so that she can catch the first bus to New York, which takes more than 2 hours on the way to arrive before her appointment at the company at 9 in the morning. Megan is a committed and hard-working girl. She is still undergoing an evaluation period in preparation for her final contract at one of the largest technology companies in America. So she is eager to follow the instructions of her superiors to work to please them and gain their trust in the hope of getting a high assessment that qualifies her to join the job. She needs money to pay rent because she lives alone. One day, Eric, her boss, asked her to stay after official working hours, which ends at 5 in the evening, to prepare an important report to submit early in the morning to the board members. And indeed, all the employees left, and Megan remained at work, focused on the computer screen. She did not even notice that she was alone. When it approached 7 o'clock in the evening, she was surprised by the power outage to tremble in fear because she was afraid of the dark and began to feel a strange movement in the company, and that there was a shadow moving quickly on the wall opposite her office. Megan kept looking for her phone in her bag and next to the computer, but she doesn't see anything, but she finally finds it. It's the only hope, so she feels reassured and started hearing songs, but fantasies and strange voices kept chasing her, so she decided to close her eyes so she wouldn't feel anything. But a few minutes and the battery of her phone is completely empty, so the horror seeps into her heart again. But she tries to gather her strength and looks for the emergency power source, which is disabled. But she realizes that it is in that room at the end of the corridor for Megan to make a decision. And in her mind are terrifying scenarios interrupted by the sound of a strong impact of rain on the glass windows. While passing through the corridor leading to the room, she felt a voice that seemed to echo in the empty corridors. Megan's thoughts accelerated and began to turn left and right in hysterical movements to stumble over something on the floor and fall. Megan retreated after giving up and decided to return to her office again. Megan put her hand over her ears, crying from fear and hoping for the power to return quickly to surprise with a voice approaching behind her. But she refused to look back to feel a strange hand holding her shoulder suddenly and a strong light in her eyes to rise up, screaming hysterically, to find in front of her Sam, a security member at the company who did not know that Megan was still in the building and that he wanted to check on her after he sensed the presence of someone in the company. Megan realizes that those strange voices and shadows are not ghosts, but in the end, Sam, who stayed with Megan, talking together until the power returned and the spirit returned to Megan again on a bad night, was like a nightmare that she will never forget forever. One day my sister decided to leave her children at my house because she had to travel for several days. Lee is 6 years old and Michael is 8 years old. So I decided to take them on an unforgettable trip to the amusement park, which is their favorite. At the beginning of the day, I prepared breakfast and woke them up from sleep, and after finishing eating, I asked them to get dressed quickly to go somewhere without mentioning any other details. And in just a few minutes we were in the car on the way to the amusement park, and Lee asked me, "Where are we going?" But I refused, and after half an hour he was surprised that they were at the amusement park and they were very happy, and so they got out of the car as soon as we arrived without waiting for me. The city was full of happiness and the cries of children everywhere, including Lee and Michael, and they decided to take the dazzlingly lit Ferris wheel, so we waited a long time in line until it was our turn. And unfortunately, I couldn't ride it because I was very afraid of it. And indeed, the moment has come. They boarded the game and only 5 minutes have passed, and the amusements with which happiness spreads around them turned in moments into screams and hysterical crying. The power went out on the Ferris wheel and it completely broke down, and Lee and Michael became suspended in the air. I felt that time had stopped and that I was standing like a paraplegic, completely unable to act. even though my phone was ringing. Elisa, my sister, was checking on us because she knew that I was giving them a surprise and that we were at the amusement park 10 minutes in which life stopped completely. Panic was everywhere, and many attempts from the parents of the children were unsuccessful. And suddenly the solution appeared. Jake, a maintenance worker who hastily grabbed a headlight, grabbed his toolkit. He was determined to bring joy back to the park, and when he arrived at the main power plant, he discovered that one of the animals had devoured the wires and caused a short circuit, leaving the entire amusement park in horror. And in minutes, Jake fixed the malfunction, and the game moved to get down from it for Lee and Michael to hug me to leave the amusement park immediately, which turned in my mind to the most terrible memories that happened in my life.